I'm so glad you're here with us today. We're diving deep into A Course in Miracles, and if you're just joining our community, you might be wondering what this course is all about. I'd love to invite you to check out the very first video on this channel, where I break down exactly what A Course in Miracles is, how it came to exist, and why it's been transforming lives for over 5 decades. It'll give you the perfect foundation for everything we explore together here. Now, today we're moving into Section 4 of Chapter 10, The End of Sickness. And I want you to really let that title sink in for a moment. The end of sickness, not managing sickness, not coping with sickness, not even healing from this particular illness so you can eventually get another one. But the actual end of sickness itself. For most of us, that sounds impossible. We've been taught our entire lives that sickness is just part of being human. Bodies get sick. That's what they do. It's random, it's inevitable. It's the price we pay for having physical form. We might recover from one illness only to face another. We might have periods of health, but we know, somewhere deep down, that sickness is always waiting, always possible, always part of the human condition. But what if that's not true? What if sickness isn't an inevitable part of existence at all, but rather a choice we're making over and over again without even realizing it? What if everything we believe about illness, suffering, and the vulnerability of the body is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what we are? This is where A Course in Miracles takes us into territory that challenges everything we think we know. Because the Course isn't talking about better medicine or healthier lifestyles or positive thinking. It's talking about something far more radical. It's saying that sickness exists because we want it to exist, because we need it to exist, because it serves a purpose so essential to the ego's survival that we would rather suffer than give it up. And if that's true, if sickness is truly a choice and not a condition, then it can end. Not someday, not in some distant future when we've evolved enough or learned enough or become spiritual enough, but now, in this moment, the instant we become willing to choose differently. But here's what makes this so challenging. Ending sickness doesn't mean healing the body, though that may happen. It means withdrawing our investment in being sick. It means letting go of everything we gain from illness, the attention, the sympathy, the excuse to avoid what frightens us, the proof that we're victims of forces beyond our control, the validation that we're separate, vulnerable bodies instead of eternal, invulnerable spirit. Most of us have never looked honestly at why we might want to be sick. It sounds absurd. Who would want to suffer? Who would choose pain and limitation? But the Course asks us to look deeper, to examine not just the obvious costs of sickness, but the hidden benefits, the ways illness serves us, the purposes it fulfills, the identity it gives us. Because until we're willing to see what we're getting from sickness, we can't choose to let it go. Until we recognize the investment we've made in being sick, we can't withdraw it. Until we understand that the end of sickness requires the end of everything we thought we needed sickness for, we'll keep choosing it over and over again, wondering why healing never seems to last. So today, we're going to explore what it really means for sickness to end. Not as some distant hope or abstract theory, but as a present possibility available to you right now. We're going to look at the final choice that must be made, the purposes that must be released, and the healed perception that becomes possible when we stop making sickness real. This isn't easy material, but if you're ready to question everything you've believed about illness, limitation, and what you really are, then let's begin. Let's start. with something that might sound shocking at first. According to A Course in Miracles, sickness is not something that happens to you. It's something you choose, not consciously, not deliberately, but on a level of mind so deep that most of us have never even looked there. And this is actually the most hopeful thing the Course could possibly tell us. Because if sickness is a choice, then it can be unchosen. If it's a decision, then a different decision can be made. But here's where we have to be really honest with ourselves. The ego has presented sickness to us as a gift. I know that sounds insane. What kind of gift is pain? What kind of gift is limitation and suffering? But look at what sickness actually does for us. It proves we're bodies. It validates our separation. It gives us a reason for our unhappiness that has nothing to do with the choices we're making in our minds. It makes us special. It gets us attention. It excuses us from responsibilities we don't want to face. It allows us to be victims instead of decision makers. This is the ego's gift, and we've accepted it. Over and over again, throughout our lives, we've said yes to this gift because we believed it would give us something we needed. But what the Course is revealing is that this gift has cost us everything. It's cost us our peace. It's cost us our joy. It's cost us our awareness of what we really are. So the final choice is this. Are you willing to give the gift back? Are you willing to see that what you thought was being done to you is actually something you're doing to yourself? Are you willing to recognize that the power that made you sick is the same power that can make you well? This is where it gets uncomfortable, because most of us have built our entire identity around being bodies that can be hurt. We've invested everything in the belief that we're vulnerable, that forces outside our control can damage us, that sickness is something that just happens and we're helpless victims of it. To let that go feels dangerous. It feels like we're giving up the one thing that proves we're real. But here's what the Course is asking us to understand. The end of sickness begins the moment you recognize that you have a choice. Not a choice about whether your body has symptoms right now, but a choice about where you place your faith. A choice about what you believe is true about you. A choice about whether you're going to continue investing in the ego's system of sickness and suffering, or whether you're finally ready to choose healing. And healing, in the Course's terms, doesn't mean making the body better. It means changing your mind about what you are. It means withdrawing your identity from the body and remembering that you are spirit. It means taking back the power you gave to sickness and recognizing that nothing in this world has any power over the eternal truth of your being. This is the choice that ends sickness. Not someday. Not when you're more spiritual or more evolved or more deserving. Right now, in this moment. The instant you become willing to see that you've been choosing sickness because you thought you needed it and that you can choose differently. The ego will scream that this is impossible, that you can't just decide not to be sick, that there are real diseases with real causes and real symptoms. And yes, in the dream of separation, that appears to be true. But the Course is pointing you to the dreamer, not the dream, to the mind that's choosing what to believe, not the body that seems to be suffering the consequences. The final choice is always available, always now, and it starts with one simple willingness to question whether sickness is really what you thought it was. Now we come to the part that most people don't want to look at, the part that feels almost insulting to consider. But if we're going to understand why sickness continues, why it keeps coming back, why healing so often seems temporary, we have to be willing to ask an uncomfortable question. What am I getting out of being sick? I know that feels wrong to even consider. When you're in pain, when you're exhausted, when you're struggling just to get through the day, the last thing you want to hear is that you're somehow benefiting from this. But the Course isn't talking about conscious desire here. It's talking about the hidden purposes that operate beneath our awareness, the secret payoffs that make sickness feel necessary, even though we consciously hate it. So, let's look honestly at what sickness does for us. It makes us special. Think about it. When you're sick, you become the center of attention. People ask how you're feeling. They adjust their plans around you. They treat you with extra care and consideration. Your needs become priority. Your limitations become everyone else's concern. And there's a part of the ego that loves this, that needs this, that would rather be sick and special than healthy and ordinary. Sickness also makes us innocent. It gives us a reason for our unhappiness that has nothing to do with the choices we're making in our minds. We're not unhappy because we're choosing fear over love. We're unhappy because we're sick. We're not failing because we're afraid. We're failing because we're limited by illness. The sickness becomes the explanation for everything that's wrong in our lives, and that lets us off the hook from having to look at the real cause. And here's the deepest purpose of all. Sickness proves we're bodies. It validates the entire ego thought system. Every symptom, every limitation, every moment of pain reinforces the belief that we are these vulnerable, temporary physical forms. That separation is real, that we can be hurt, that we can be destroyed. And as long as we believe that, we never have to face the overwhelming truth of what we really are. This is why the end of sickness requires releasing these purposes, not just understanding them intellectually, but actually being willing to let them go. Being willing to give up the attention, the sympathy, the specialness. Being willing to stop using sickness as an excuse. Being willing to take responsibility for our experience instead of blaming it on the body. But here's what makes this so difficult. These purposes aren't just giving us something. They're protecting us from something. They're protecting us from the terror of our own magnitude, from the responsibility of being decision makers instead of victims, from the love that we're actually afraid of, because if we let it in, it would dissolve every boundary we've ever built to keep ourselves small and separate and safe. The Course is asking us to look at all of this without judgment, not to feel guilty for having these hidden motivations, but simply to see them clearly, because you can't release what you won't acknowledge. You can't let go of purposes you're pretending don't exist. So ask yourself honestly, what would you lose if you weren't sick? What role would you lose? What attention would you lose? What excuse would you lose? What proof of your vulnerability would you lose? And most importantly, are you willing to lose all of that in exchange for remembering what you really are? This is where the end of sickness becomes real. Not when the symptoms disappear, but when you become willing to withdraw your investment in needing them. So we've made the choice. We've released the purposes. And now comes the question. What's left? What happens when you stop making sickness real? When you stop investing in being a vulnerable body? When you withdraw all the faith you've placed in limitation and suffering? What's left is what was always there. What never changed. What never could be changed by anything that happens in this world of form and time. What's left is the truth of what you are. This is what the Course means by healed perception. It's not a new way of seeing the body. It's a complete shift in identity. It's the recognition that you are not a body at all. You are spirit, eternal, unlimited, unchangeable spirit. And everything you thought was happening to you in the body was just a dream. A convincing dream, yes. A painful dream, absolutely. But still just a dream from which you can awaken. This is the radical shift that ends sickness permanently. Not because you've finally fixed the body, but because you've stopped believing the body defines you. Not because you've overcome disease, but because you've recognized that disease never touched what you really are. Not because you've achieved some superhuman level of health, but because you've remembered that you're not human at all in the way you thought you were. And here's what's so beautiful about healed perception. It doesn't require you to deny what seems to be happening in the body. It doesn't require you to pretend symptoms don't exist or pain isn't occurring. It simply means you've stopped giving those things the power to define your reality. You've stopped making them mean something about your wholeness. You've stopped letting them determine your peace. Living from this healed perception is completely different from living as a body trying to get well. When you're identified with the body, health becomes your constant concern. You're always monitoring, always worried, always trying to maintain or improve or protect. But when you know yourself as spirit, the body becomes irrelevant to your sense of wholeness. It might function or malfunction, feel comfortable or uncomfortable, but none of that touches the truth of what you are. This is healing as remembering, not fixing. You're not trying to make yourself whole. You're recognizing that you never stopped being whole. You're not trying to achieve health. You're accepting that you are already and have always been complete. The sickness was never real in the first place. It was just a mistaken perception, a false belief, a dream of limitation that you've been dreaming while remaining forever unlimited. And when you live from this awareness, even for brief moments, everything changes. The fear that underlies sickness disappears because there's nothing to protect. The suffering that comes from believing you're vulnerable dissolves because you've remembered you're invulnerable. The constant anxiety about the body's condition fades because your peace doesn't depend on the body anymore. This doesn't mean the body never experiences discomfort. This isn't about transcending physical sensation. It's about transcending the meaning you've given to it. It's about no longer using the body's condition as evidence of your reality. It's about living from wholeness regardless of what appears to be happening in form. This is what life looks like without the idol of sickness. Not perfection in the body, but peace in the mind. Not invulnerability in form, but recognition of your invulnerability in truth. Not the absence of physical challenges, but the presence of unchanging awareness that nothing in this world can diminish what you are. The end of sickness is the beginning of living as what you've always been. And it's available right now, in this very moment, the instant you're willing to see yourself as God created you. Conclusion: the end begins now. So let's bring this home. We've explored something truly radical today, the end of sickness. Not as some distant hope or mystical promise, but as a present possibility available to you right now. We've seen that sickness is a choice, not a condition. That it begins and ends in the mind, not the body. We've looked honestly at the purposes sickness serves, the hidden payoffs that keep us invested in being sick. And we've glimpsed what healed perception looks like. Seeing yourself as God created you, living from wholeness instead of brokenness, recognizing that nothing in this world of form can touch the truth of what you are. The end of sickness doesn't come from better treatments or stronger willpower or even spiritual practices. It comes from a simple shift in perception, from withdrawing your faith from the body and returning it to spirit, from releasing the purposes that made sickness necessary and accepting that you are whole now and always. This is available to you in this very moment, the choice to be whole, the decision to stop making sickness real, the willingness to see yourself differently. And every moment you choose healing over sickness, love over fear, truth over illusion, you're not just transforming your own experience. You're helping to awaken everyone, because in truth, we're all one mind learning to remember what we are. Thank you so much for being here today. If this message touched something in you, if it shifted your perception even slightly, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button. It helps this content reach more people who are searching for true healing and peace. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. We're exploring A Course in Miracles together every single day, diving deep into teachings that have the power to completely transform how you see yourself and the world. And please, share this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. You never know whose life might be changed by these words. And please leave me a comment below. Share your own reflections. And you know what? I was so surprised to discover that these videos are attracting not only those who already knew the Course, but also those who had never been in contact with it before. Do you understand what this means to me? This is simply wonderful. So please, tell me down below. Did you already know the Course, or did you come to know it through this channel? I'll see you tomorrow with another deep dive into A Course in Miracles. Until then, choose wholeness, choose peace, choose to remember the truth.